Right ahead.
Okay. My name is Dave Gold, and this is my co-facilitator, Diane Grover. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the process here, but I'll just sort of briefly explain it. The way this works is there are 4 questions that I'll ask you that you may have noticed are in here, like right down there, so you can kind of get ahead. And the idea is that you'll answer them. We will write down your answers, and then we make a report of this meeting, and all of the reports then will be collated by UNM to try to come up with some suggestions for the police department. So the goal of this meeting, if you look at the questions are worded in, it's more about what you would want to see happen. Now, you're welcome. Part of the question is like, why do you think that? And as part of that, you're welcome to explain why you think anything. And and of course, that might be that something negative happened that you want to talk about, and that's really okay. It's pretty obvious. I mean, there's a 37-page Department of Justice report. You know, the mayor has talked about challenges and opportunities and all this stuff. So it's pretty obvious that people realize that there are things people may say that are negative. But in the end, if you want to change something, you really have to come up with a positive solution. Like if you just say, this is crappy, it's like, okay, like I say, there's a 37-page Department of Justice report. I'm pretty sure that people get that there's something going on here that maybe could require improvement. So what I'm hoping, and what I'll keep trying to bring people back to is, how can we make things better in this city? What are the positive things that can happen here? But like I say, you're welcome to say anything you want. But there are some guidelines, and you might want to look behind you and see what they are. One is speak and listen with respect, so we may learn from each other. That's really important. And so, like, if somebody's talking and you jump in, I will come down on you rather quickly and hard. That's just not cool. I try to be concise, and more than being concise, as you think about your answers, try to think, how is what I'm saying going to translate into something that somebody can actually utilize as a positive statement, as something that can be used for something. Address the problem, don't attack, don't attack the person. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, one thing, I'm really honored that all of you are here today and are willing to take out the time to participate in this discussion. So every person here in my book is A1. They're awesome. And so that's the way I'm assuming it, and I hope you will all recognize that and treat each other as such. Seek clarification before making assumptions. That's not so applicable. Number 5, seek solutions that meet everyone's needs. So that's something too, like, when you're talking about a solution, if it's a solution that's not viable, that's not going to be that useful. So as you start thinking about solutions, think like, how will this work for everyone? Will this work for everyone? Not just, it's more than will this work for anyone. It's like, will this work for everyone? So that's what's going on here today. And the way this will work is we'll spend an hour for the first 2 questions. I'm going to go around and I'm going to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to speak. So we'll all have like kind of equal time, and during that time, everyone will be speaking and listening with respect, so we may learn from one another. And then I'll kind of open it up and vary it, but I may, like, if it looks like other people want to speak, I may move you along, but I'll try to accommodate everyone. I don't like to say you have exactly 3 minutes to say something, because I just find it's easier to, you're not running away from it.
No.
Go ahead.
I'm not going.
Okay. I just find that's a little bit, it's nicer to get more flow. So, and then we'll take a break for about 15 minutes, I think it is, and then come back and more fun and merriment. So, are there any questions about the process? And once again, I want to remind you that what's happening is that everything that you're saying, every idea will be put into a report for UNM. And then they're going to go through it and do something, which, hopefully I'm pretty sure they'll do something good, but I
I
don't
have
know
a
what that
question
is.
about the process.
Sure, yeah.
So I was at the last meeting on Saturday,
Uh-huh.
and I asked about the process, and
Okay.
I was told to contact Annabelle, I believe it was.
Oh, okay.
So I contacted her to try to find out what the process was. But I think the one thing that we need to be doing in these meetings is to communicate the process up front.
Okay.
So I did my homework and I brought it today to share with the folks so that they could understand the process. Because
Okay.
I think if the process is not effective, then it's not going to work. And you asked the question a little bit earlier in what you said, will this work? And so I very much want this to work because
Good.
we need to fix these problems.
Yes.
And there are many people who are dedicated to doing that. But I wanted to let people know that they could, first of all, there was a resolution, which is R14-67, which can be found on the cabq.gov website. That was implemented by Ken Sanchez and Trudy Jones. When you go to the site for the enacted legislation, they refer to an Exhibit A, which is basically the process. Unfortunately, for some reason, they do not include the process on that link, but I was able to obtain it. So I think it's important, maybe if you'd like to share it, I don't necessarily need to be the messenger of this, but I do think it's important to understand that there's $150,000 that's been dedicated, and you can read the process online, or you can obtain it from Annabelle, I guess. But, and the reason why I was tipped off is because somebody in the workers, somebody that I had talked to, because I said, well, what is the process? And they didn't know. You know, then I said, well, you know, how is this funded? And you know, well, and the tip that I got, well, the money is only available, the process will only be as good until the money stops. So if we never get to the second and third phase, which is the most important phase, then in essence, this is all about listening, but not necessarily translating this information and implementing it into something that will be able to be beneficial to the citizens. So I just want to make it clear that it's $150,000 that's been dedicated to this process. And in phase 2, there is supposed to be a feedback session. I think it's important if you're participating today that you follow through and make sure that what we've been inputting is actually going to be affect change, okay? So there's supposed to be a feedback session. That separate feedback session will then be held to present the summarized information. Each stakeholder group will draft a set of community goals. That would be people. They have not been able to determine or to tell me who will be selected, whether it will be all of us that are participating or whether it will be a cherry-picked few. Through a voting process by all of the groups, a set of community-wide consensus goals will be established and affirmed. That's a pretty good idea if we have enough money. And then in part 3 of phase 2, there's an action plan. These final prioritized goals will then be put into an action plan, with that action plan designed and built by the community and APT to advance police community relations, enhance public safety, and address issues that affect the quality of life in Albuquerque. So that's a pretty good deal if we can get to that point, if there's enough money. And then there's a phase 3 where there will be a monitoring committee. So, and you can also hear the discussion by the city councilors, because that was rather interesting on the website also. On the June 16th, 2014 City Council meeting, there was a discussion about it. It was not necessarily unanimous that they all voted for this because there were some issues with it that you can discuss.
I want to just kind of move everything so we can actually
Okay,
do the
so I
process.
just would like to, I'd like to bring that out so that people are aware, and I would recommend that we change this process so that this is communicated up front to people so that we know what the whole process is and what we can expect from it.
Okay, that sounds good.
We will certainly get that suggestion made.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the context you put in, I think, is good. I mean, the thing is that what we're doing here is phase 1 of the process. And phase 1 is just listening and gathering ideas. And then the subsequent phases, phase 2 and phase 3, are the phases where decisions of some type will be made. So that's why, you know, once again, I go back to this emphasis of trying to come up with ideas that are actually viable, or statements that are viable in these sessions. Because then after that, you know, then something useful can happen from that. Any other questions, or did that cover this well, Dan?
I have a,
Yeah.
if I may, I have just basically a housekeeping question. It just so happens that I have to leave at 4. I'm not asking for special permission to talk first, but I do have to leave at 4, just my life is busy. And so, should I just stay for this, or would you suggest that I just
Well,
go?
no, I think you should stay, and we'll start with you. 'Cause-
Really?
And then, Ted.
Okay, I have to leave soon because that's the way meetings were scheduled. I
Okay.
just left one meeting at City Hall,
Okay. All
which,
right, we'll make sure you get your,
well, I missed it, some of it. I want to make sure I make it here in time.
okay.
So, and now I have to be at City Council meeting, which is at 5 o'clock. And
Okay.
in order to sign up for public comment, I have to be at least at 4:30 over there. So I have to drive
So
it.
what time do you have to leave? 4?
Well, I have to leave probably about 4:15.
Okay, all right, good.
So I
Thanks.
like to cover most as possible. So
Okay,
I can
well,
leave
we'll
because
talk.
I have to.
I'll make sure that you get.
That's
you get your
not
chance.
that's not my fault. That's the fault.
Okay.
City council
I'm not blaming you.
and mayor.
But we'll take care of that.
That's the way they schedule.
That's cool. Any other time constraints, comments? Okay, good. So, the way this, there's 2 questions that are the first 2 questions that are very, very similar to each other. And I'm gonna read you a prepared statement because people looked at these questions and were like, what? You know, I don't fully get so the first question that we're gonna talk about is, what are your goals and expectations for police community relations in Albuquerque? And why are these goals and expectations important to you? What experiences, values, beliefs, feelings influence your goals? So the second question is the exact same question, but it uses the word interactions instead of relationships. So some of you may be thinking, well, what's the difference? And I will tell you the official difference. Relations are the way in which 2 or more people or things are connected and the context and tone of that connection. Examples of goal relationships in the context of community-police relationship might include trusting, protective, partnership, supportive, nurturing, collaborative, and others. In questions 1 and 1A, we would like to hear how you describe your vision of the ideal relationship between APD, its officers, and our community. Interactions are the way that we treat one another or communicate within a relationship. The way we interact with one another can strongly affect or even change the tone or nature of the relationship. In questions 2 and 2A, we would like to hear examples of the kinds of conduct and interactions that would support your success of your ideal relationship that you shared in questions 1 and 1A. So after that, I'm sure you have
I
a
have to
totally.
go again.
What?
My hearing aid went
Oh,
out.
okay. All right, we'll
I'll
just.
be right back.
Okay, all right. So anyway, and if that's not 100% clear to you, which it may not be, then just do your best and everything will work out anyway. And what we do is when we write the report, we separate everything into things. Because also the other questions are, how do you think your goals can be best achieved and what are your specific suggestions and ideas? So in the first part of this, what we're talking about is what would an ideal relationship look like? It's not necessarily how are we going to get there. We'll talk about that like an hour from now. But it's just like how should we relate to each other? Interactions are more like doing things. Relationship is more the way that people relate to each other. I'll put it that way. So anyway, you may notice that we have some cards in front of you. And hopefully each of you has a pen, but if you don't, I have some pens in my briefcase, which I just realized. So what I'd like you to do is take a minute or 2 minutes and write down the points you'd like to make about the first question. And then we'll start, when everyone's ready, just sort of let me know, nod or something like that. And then we'll start reading answers, and we'll make sure that at least Casey and Tad get to say something. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. 10. Yeah, yeah, we'll wait for 10. Yeah, that's good. So Ty, we're having people write down things on a card first to just sort of get everyone's ideas organized.
Yeah,
Okay.
I throw it away, good one.
No.
Oh, shit. That's not my day today.
You'll have to listen harder.
Replace better.
You threw away your old
Replace
battery.
good one.
You replaced,
The same thing over and over.
or you replaced the good battery with the bad battery. Oh, well.
Yes. Good battery with good good
Oh,
battery.
okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, that sounds okay. Okay, it looks like people are more or less ready. So actually, the first thing that we're going to do, and because I forgot to do it, but fortunately Diane reminded me, and what I'd like to do is have everybody take a minute, and I really do mean a minute, and I'm kind of going to be watching the clock as we do this, but just sort of introduce yourself and tell everyone why you're here. So does anybody want to start?
I'll start. My name is Jason Carpenter. I work for the Albuquerque Police Department. I've been with the department for about 10 years. I grew up here in Albuquerque. I grew up in South Broadway.
What specialty?
I'm sorry?
What unit? What specialty?
Oh, let's just let everybody talk. We're just introducing
It's an
ourselves.
introduction, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. I grew up here. Like I said, I grew up in South Broadway, so I really didn't live in a nice neighborhood growing up. And I'm not saying anything about the city, I'm just talking about my upbringing. So I've had interactions with the police. Growing up for me was, hey, you run from the cops. That's how I grew up. But when I became a cop, I knew that we can affect change. I really do think we can. So I actually volunteered for this through the website before my lieutenant asked me if I wanted to do it. I've seen this coming. It's something that I would like to do.
Great. Well, thank you for being here, Jason. Casey?
My name is Casey Den Hollander. I retired from the Albuquerque Police about 10 years ago. Now, because APD is in the news in regard to this, I am sometimes asked by people who know me, say, oh, what do you think? I tell them, and maybe use this forum to tell people who can actually affect some change.
Good deal. Thanks, Casey.
Sure.
Good to see you.
My name is Melina Julens. I am here because my husband just recently joined APD. He was an engineer before that for over 20 years. So this is a whole new world for us, this police world. And then of course there's a lot of turmoil going on right now, so I'm just trying to figure out what this is all about.
Great.
And see if we can help or make a difference or just know what the police world is about.
Great. Thank you.
My name is Ted Niemiecki, and I'm retired contractor of many, many years. And I emigrated also as veteran also of Polish Army to United States. And so anyway, I lived in Chicago for 2 years, on the 60s. Well, that's got lots of corruption. Now, then, 1969, travel to LA, I never made it. I stopped here and I got stuck to this day. That's 1969. So I became contractor about a year later, married and became contractor about a year and a half later. And I was staying away from politics, period, because I immigrated on the political asylum. I don't want to have to do anything in politics, especially being businessman. And so, anyway,
Okay.
and finally last year, I got to the point, enough is enough. So I got involved and I am activist community, and I will get better and better as years go by, hopefully next year or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Don?
I'm a retired corporate ombudsman from Sandia National Labs, here to, out of some curiosity about the process and how it might help the relationship between the community and the police department. But partly from nature and my positive experiences with APD and from my corporate experience, wanting to see more balance in the treatment of APD so that the community can understand its role in how things are and not just point at the police department about the way things are. And I appreciate the process as something that helps bring everybody together. I'd just like to see if I can add something positive there.
Great. Thank you, John.
My name is Rochelle, and I just came because I'm very interested in human rights. I'm involved in human rights organizations, and so I was just interested in that aspect of the whole thing.
Great. Thank you, Rochelle.
I'm Cheryl,
Sure.
and I'm a retired teacher. I've lived in Albuquerque for over 40 years, and I have a family member who is a police officer. And so I'm very interested in seeing if we can't be more positive instead of so negative.
Great. Positive is good.
I'm Diane Goodman, and I have, because I was a victim, not related to APD, but a victim of this government, I have started looking at things, and APD gets a lot of heat, but there's a lot of other things that are going on related to trust and integrity that people aren't even aware of. So I am here because I have grandkids that I don't want to grow up in this society with the way things are, and I don't want any of the children to have to go through this. This is not a healthy place for kids to grow up in.
Well, thank you for being here.
My name is Glenn St. Onge. I'm a lieutenant with the Albuquerque Police Department. I've been with the department about 17 years. I actually just hit my 17th year. I agree with Jason. Jason and I worked together for many years, working Southeast Graveyard, and I do believe in you can affect change, and I really like what Don said, that balance. Being on one side of the fence, I do see an imbalance of, okay, APD needs to do X, Y, and Z. You know, I would like to see what is the community doing to help bridge that gap. You know, I think the community as a whole needs to step up as well, not just APD, because there is that division. There's a division with the community. There's a, you know, and then that division created with APD. So
Great.
in a nutshell.
Well stated. Okay, great. So what we're really going to do is we're going to give Casey the opportunity to speak first because he's got 3 minutes.
3 minutes. I can get that.
Sorry about that.
No problem. In my opinion, APD does not have a problem with, as some police departments have, with corruption. You can't bribe a cop here. In my opinion, APD does not have a problem with brutality, as some police departments have. That is, cops aren't known to beat up people willy-nilly. Here, some police departments do have that problem. But in my opinion, a negative part of what APD does have is an attitude of arrogance above the citizens that it serves. I will very briefly, this is where I basically, I see a problem in supervision and where the supervisors are, their jobs are misdirected. I feel that the sergeants, this Jason Carpenter here, for example, is a sergeant. He's a first-line supervisor within APD. Should not be doing, they should be on the street supervising their subordinates, not doing a lot of paperwork. At present, I may be wrong, I've been out of the department for 10 years. The sergeants were doing things like timesheets and making sure they were done, making sure that vacations were covered, doing a whole lot of paperwork, which kept them off of the streets supervising their subordinates. I'm sorry, Mr. St. Ange, this is what the lieutenants ought to be doing. Okay? The lieutenants should not see the light of day outside of their office, in a sense. I mean, just because they're going to be taking, they should be taking all of that paperwork away from the sergeants. The captains, which is the third line of supervision, ought to be doing all of the community relations type of work in addition to what they do. At this point, patrol officers are often sent to meetings such as this to just see what the community thinks or give them an idea, the community idea of what they do, and to listen and to give feedback, neighborhood meetings, etc. This ought to be done by the captains. The patrol officers or detectives, for example, shouldn't be giving classes. They should be patrolling or doing their investigative jobs. The captains, who will be very busy because of this, all of the budgetary stuff should be assigned to the fourth tier, which are the assistant chiefs. The captains shouldn't be begging for money for their particular area commands, etc. Budgetary stuff ought to be done by the assistant chiefs. Again, those poor guys and women will never see the light of day because they're just going to be so busy with that. And I think that if these types of things are implemented, there will be better supervision on the ground because the sergeants will then have the time to be able to just supervise the people on the streets to make sure that the wishes of the chief are implemented. Those are my suggestions. I think I've taken more than 3 minutes. I'm
Yeah.
sorry for that.
No, but you got extra minute because you said you had to leave before, so.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, folks. No disrespect to anyone here. It's just that my life is busy. It's busier now than when I worked, so I've got to leave.
Okay, thank you, Casey.
Sure. Sure.
So,
There goes. Well, I can always say that, I suppose.
yeah, souvenir.
Okay.
Now, you can always also contribute more stuff on the website and things like
Sure.
that, so if you think of other stuff.
Sure.
it's not over.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Ed, why don't you go, because you gotta leave at 1:15.
Okay. Well, here is first. Our reason to be here. First respondent, right? That's what this meeting is.
Wait, hold on a second, does anybody else want water before we go?
I'm sorry, that was rude of me.
Oh,
I
no.
think it's more
That was
fair.
rude of me, because I should have been, sorry. Okay.
That's what
If
is
you want
this.
water, raise your hand. Ted.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay, I'm sorry, Ted, please continue.
Well, first respondent. That's what this meeting all about it tonight, right? Well, who's first respondent? Ask a 6-year-old boy, girl. They tell you, well, ambulance, fire department, well, of course, then police officer. Even kids are afraid in a way, depends how they were raised and where they were raised, afraid cops. Most little kids are afraid and they don't. So anyway, so we're looking at first respond. APD, and then ambulance, paramedic, fire truck. Well, sometime all four show up, which is fine. But it's also waste our taxpayers' money. And that has to be prioritized. That's my observation. A cop should stay on the background, not detective. Cop, detective, in many cases now, this new, what they created 6 years ago, and now they supposed to improve at CID and COST, COAST, that is unit. Well, Lieutenant knows about it. He's one of the stakeholders, of 45 stakeholders. Are we here stakeholders? No, stakeholders, those are, because city already passed one ordinance for stakeholders, money in issue. That's why this 18% they created, which is equal to 20 million. Here is problem with this, right here, with this money, lot of money. I did say 500 million last year, state appropriate to mental health services. State senators, New Mexico, appropriate. Well, now they make a big deal, raising 18%, well, just 18%, but actually, well, 18 million. What is 18 million compared to 6.5 billion, 500 billion? This is a lot of money. Here is so much corruption. Excuse
Let me ask
me.
you something, Ted. What do you think should be done differently? Or what do you see as like a positive thing that could be done?
What
what's
is positive? It's just simply, it is so much money and money corrupting, and all politicians on the top. And now, what needs to be done? It's just impossible to describe. So many things. System has to be completely overhauled.
So maybe
And-
you could tell us, like, just even, I know it's difficult to say everything that needs to be done,
Well,
but just a couple of things that are like,
cops doing what they've been told all the time. Don't blame cops. Comes from the top, from the mayor, then Perry and chain command, all the way down to this street, not walking cops, patrolmen. They doing what they should be doing. Yes, there are many bad attitude, bully, and like this man retire. Casey made statement that have attitude problem, and I forgot what words he used. Yes, I had no problem with cops until about 2 years ago when I approached and then I start standing up. I said, enough is enough. I'm not gonna be afraid of cops. So that's exactly what I'm doing right here. I'm not gonna be afraid. I'm not gonna be afraid cops, and I'm gonna try to say it as long as it's appropriate. That's my constitutional rights. First Amendment. I'm gonna, here I was arrested loudly speaking. By who? His unit, Lieutenant Unit. I don't know about Jason.
Well, let's, anyway, you know,
Oh, well,
That
here is
would-
priority. How are they supposed to respond? Cops, they are not trained psychiatrists or any mental workers, neither social workers. So,
so you'd see a different training method,
different training method.
okay?
And here I was approached by two because somebody didn't like it, one non-profit, what I had to say. They call and this unit arrive and the two detectives show up first. And what you doing? Well, they already knew it because I have, something good they done at that unit. But, well, somebody nice, you have to always think, especially with powerful people. You have to be careful because next thing, well, you know what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
You have to be careful because then next
Don't
thing
get you.
can come back to you. That's exactly. And what are you doing, Dad? Why are you yelling?
Okay.
Why are you speaking loud?
Yes,
Did you speak loudly? And so on.
We're gonna have to, we have to move so that other people can talk, but just, because I know you have to leave, do you wanna wrap
Right.
up anything? And once again, like, do you have any ideas or suggestions for how, you said that two people came, like, what would be different? What should they do differently?
Well, here is our first responders, which is CI and cost unit. Let's social worker get involved, approach, social worker or mental health worker approach,
So you're
people
saying
who's
with a call, like, if they made a call that you would wanna see
right,
a
and
mental health worker or
because
something.
somebody say, this guy, he's nasty, he just, what I was doing, just sharing information for public records information of these non-profit contracts. And that then
Okay.
that was social worker over there, that was mental worker, and that was what's his name? Just a second, Dr. Rosenbaum, psychiatrist. I didn't even spoke to him one word.
Okay. Well, anyway,
He didn't spoke to me either.
Okay,
But
so Ted,
that
we
is
need to
all-
give other people a chance to talk now.
It is bad over there. So just this unit has to be overhauled, and police officer overall attitude needs to be changed.
Okay.
They want, Lieutenant says, well, I like it what this man said bought. Yes, bought, but not that, they screw up, they need to straight up, simply as that.
Yeah.
And now, what we're doing right now, they
So-
want to
so
ask,
Ted,
we want
we
guinea
have-
pigs, because
we have
we
to
are
let
not
other people-
stakeholders.
Ted, we have to let other people talk now.
Yeah, thank you, I got
Yeah,
it.
yeah, okay, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. Okay, who wants to go next? Anybody? Everyone will have the opportunity, and I will gently push on you to speak, so.
I'll speak next.
Okay, Jason, go for it then.
I just, I guess we're talking about the police-community relations. One thing I just want to say is, as police officers, we're also part of the community. And I don't think sometimes, I mean, we're looked at as us against them. At least the guys that I work with and that I work with, I don't know everybody on the department, but I don't know anybody that comes to work and says, you know, anything negative about the community based on like us versus them attitude. So I just want to say that we are part of the community. One of my goals is to listen to what everybody has to say and then try to affect change, like I said, with the squad that I supervise. But one thing I wanted to mention was what Casey talked about, and what I wrote down once he was talking was about being overtasked. I think the department right now, the police department, is the officers here are overtasked. And sir, you are right. You're talking, if we can have a doctor go to calls like that, we would love that, because it would have officers on the street responding to, you know, just the way our calls are prioritized. Sometimes we're holding several calls.
And I can speak to that a little bit more, Jason.
Okay. And then one thing also is I wanted to talk about, which I wrote down, was the human aspect. Now remember, everybody in here is human beings. None of us are perfect. None of us are. As police officers, sometimes I think we are held to a higher standard, and I agree with it. I do. But why shouldn't the citizens be held to that same standard? Why shouldn't teachers? Why shouldn't nurses? Why shouldn't everybody be held to that high standard? And I'll say this, and like I said, you know, once an adult's an adult, you kind of can't keep blaming how you were raised or how you grew up. Once you're an adult, you make adult decisions. So, and you know, it was brought up here too. I think, you know, the citizens, the department, we have the report, whether we like it or not. We have to do what we're told. Now, do I agree with everything that's in there? No, but some of the stuff, yeah, attitude, that's something for me that we can start working on yesterday. You mentioned attitude, Casey talked about attitude. I agree sometimes, but don't forget about the human factor. We come to work and we take 100 calls and we have a bad attitude one day. The citizens, they're gonna remember that one time, but the other 99 times, they're not really gonna remember that. So, and I'm just.
First responded
Ted,
2 days to respond.
Ted, I gave you twice as long as everyone else so far, because I know you had to leave.
Yeah, 2 days to respond the call, just last week.
So
Just I'll wrap it up. Last thing I wanted to say is, if anybody else, and I'm being serious, if anybody else knows somebody that wants to join the police department, you guys see our numbers. They're put on the news. You know, I filled out an email today talking about community relations. One thing I want to volunteer in is recruiting, because, you know, I'm in the military also, and I help recruiting with the military. But the way our numbers are, and it kind of leads to some of the issues that we are facing today. So, if you guys know somebody that wants to join, we need a little bit of help, you know.
For $500,000 maybe a year.
Okay, who wishes to be next? Okay.
I would like to say that, I don't know if people are aware of it or not, but in this budget for 2014, they're down 100 officers. So that money has been redirected. So when Casey talks about they've got people doing paperwork when they should be out on the streets, it's because they're down 100 officers. So they're just trying to do what they can with, you know, being that much short and not, for some reason, not being able to get more officers in. I also agree with Casey that there is a bit of an arrogance, and you know, my position is if you're in a position of power, it doesn't matter whether you're in a position of power in a corporation or if you're in a position of power with a gun, you don't need to be aggressive. In fact, you can be less aggressive because you know you have the authority to do what you need to do. And I have seen relatively simple just interactions with police that could have been handled so differently just by saying it in a way that can be more collaborative rather than an us versus them. It's simple things like, even because people are antagonistic towards you. They're in a bad situation when they have to interact with you anyway. So rather than take a position of, strength and power, and don't forget who I am, it's better to kind of just agree with them a little bit. You don't have to, you don't have to agree completely with what they're saying, but just kind of try to unite with them in a way that can make them calm down. And in fact, at the last meeting,
One thing I just want to say is, if you remember rule number, address the problem, don't attract the person. So these guys are here as, they're just community members here today.
right, and I'm not
So,
attacking,
okay.
I'm not meaning to attack, I'm
Yeah.
trying to
So
say,
let's-
trying
yeah,
to
but-
come up with a solution. So I think the
Yeah.
solution is to be able to say things in a way that are not distancing, but are more collaborative, that are more, somebody may say, well, why do you guys do this or that, or why do you guys kill people or something, and you can, rather than say, well, we have to protect ourselves, say, we don't like to kill people either, because that's a true statement. There's ways to unite them, so you don't have to. So that's one of the things that I would like to say, and I think when you're in a position of power, it's easier to back off, because you can take the move when you need to, when it's really appropriate. So de-escalate. I do think that Chief Eden is trying to do the right thing to try to solve the problem. But from what I understand, there are people in the police force that are not necessarily bought into the process. Obviously, the two people that are here today are definitely bought into it, but there's some kind of an issue going on with whether they're bought into the process. So that's a bigger issue to try to change culture. So I hope that we can support him in that. And obviously, there's not a lot of people that are here. So that tells me I'm not sure there's a lot of confidence in this process, because there's been a lot of issues, and yet we see a lot of pro people here, which I think is great, but I don't see a lot of the people that have actually had the issues with the first responders. So I think that says something about the process. I'd also like to say trust and integrity is important, and when we talk to officers, if we could be sure that they were trustworthy in what they were telling us, it would change the relationship right off the bat. And so I think there's times when there isn't truth, and as a result of that, it creates a barrier. It's important to tell the truth. If somebody, and I just had this situation this morning, I asked a question, what is the procedure? And I got a different answer today than I did the other day. One is truthful, one is not. So when you get that kind of inconsistency, it tells you can't trust that right off the bat. So that trust and integrity is very important.
I'm gonna ask you to wrap up just a little bit right now, so we can get other people a chance to talk. We'll come back also, so if you think of something else, this won't be your only chance.
Yes. Well, I agree with you. We need to expect more from the people as citizens. The society, nothing controls the society more than the government does. So if the government has got some issues in it, and again, it's not just APD, but if there's issues within trust and integrity within the government, that does filter out into the rest of society. And unfortunately, the police are the ones who have to pick up the underbelly of the city. So that's what I would like to say.
Great, thank you, Diane. And Cheryl, you.
Well, I think we need to hear more good stories. If all you hear is bad stuff, then you think everything's terrible and awful. Being a retired teacher, I think the teachers and the police are the two things that the news media loves best to beat up on. And you, as a teacher, I know there were thousands of good things that happened. You never heard about any of those. You only hear about the crud. You're only hearing about the crud from the police. And I think we need to hear more good stuff.
Okay. Okay.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay. Which lucky person is next? All right, go.
I'll go. Casey, one thing I have to say about Casey, he's a legend. He did most of his career in crimes against children, and I really respect what he says. I kind of disagree with it a little bit. Whereas as a sergeant, I completely agree. I was a sergeant for almost 7 years. You lead from the front. I think to a certain extent, the department has gotten into some of the troubles it has through lack of supervision. Completely agree with that. But as a lieutenant, it's kind of hard to, I had to take a step back because I still enjoyed leading from the front. I like taking calls for service. I like being out there with the troops, but it was a little bit hard because I'm more of an administrator now. And the staffing levels is a huge problem, you know. They've said it before, as far as this community policing or problem-oriented policing, what we kind of got into in the 90s and then got away from it in the 2000s, and then it morphed into problem-oriented policing. I remember when I was a bike officer, all the shop owners knew my name. They could come to me and say, hey, we got a problem over here, can you guys go look at it? Or hey, that car over there is dealing dope. We had that rapport with, you know, the neighborhood associations, with neighbors, with businesses. And I think we've really gotten away from that because of the attrition rates for the department. You know, it's kind of hard to go make contact with business owners or go check on the elderly lady that you know lives alone in the neighborhood when you're taking 30 calls a night or 15 calls a night or 20 calls a night. You can't do it. So I do believe in community policing, but you also have to have the community to buy into that as well. One thing I really liked, I took a month-long leadership course put on by the International Association of the Chiefs of Police. It's kind of long, IACP. And they had this command structure of a pyramid, and it had the chief on top, deputy chiefs, lieutenants, or commanders, lieutenants, but then they showed a different example of the community on top, and then the beat officers, and then the sergeants, and then the lieutenants. And I really like that model, which I think that, you know, hopefully we can shift towards that where the community is on top with the chief being at the bottom. And they teach that in a lot of leadership courses. It was reverse, what do you call it? Command structure.
Engineering.
Yeah.
I just finished that course about a month ago.
Yeah, it was a really good course. And one last thing that I'll say that I agree with Casey. I've been here 17 years. I'm a transplant from San Diego. I've traveled all around the nation teaching courses for police courses, and you don't see corruption here. You don't see bias-based policing here. I just took a bias-based policing course a couple weeks ago, and the instructors were all from communities and departments where that was a huge problem, where officers were taking enforcement action or uses of force just based solely off someone's ethnicity. And they were amazed that we don't have that problem here. That, you know, our problems stem from uses of force, and that's why, you know, we've taken an aggressive approach to revamp our use of force policies. You know, grassroots, starting over with community policing again. You know, the crisis intervention program. One thing that we looked at that I've been proposing with my team is to have a mobile crisis team where we have a clinician, master's level or higher, riding with a crisis intervention officer, and they take those calls for service. That's it. Doesn't take out of the field. Well, you do take an officer out of the field, but you're putting back into it because they're taking all those crisis calls. Instead of dispatching 3, 4, 5 officers for one call, you actually have that clinician right there on the spot. We've looked at other really, really successful models, Portland, San Antonio, and it seems to work in those cities. So I think it can work here because those are cities of similar size. So, and I'll shut up now. Sorry.
No, please don't.
Thanks, Ken. Okay. One of you three.
I could go.
Yay,
Um,
okay, Michelle.
Are we, so we're on,
We're trying to do.
look of
And
this.
I'll remind everyone because it does.
About
it's
where
easy
we
to get
are
lost.
exactly.
But the idea is to try to come up with what type of relationship should the police and community have.
Okay, so that,
Like-
we're on
like an
we're on
example is
number
what-
one.
Yeah, what Glenn just said about the idea of the community, the pyramid where the community's on top, like that
Yeah.
describes a relationship. You know, and I'm gonna use that example now when I have to explain this question.
I was a little bit confused as well.
Yeah, but it's okay. I know the questions are, you know, and when we write the reports, we just divide everything.
Yeah, I know, I just
We'll have
got
more
confused
chances
with
to
all
talk.
the back and forth.
Yeah, but so it's, yeah, like this, it's a simple question in a way. What relationship do you have?
Yeah.
You know, like.
So basically my idea would be, my expectation would be just the word just left my mind completely. Both sides respecting the rights of both sides, basically. and that everybody has human rights and that they are respected at all times, basically.
That's great.
Yeah.
See, there's a nice, concise answer. Good job. Okay.
I guess it's me.
Yes, it is.
Ideally, it's what a lot of you have already said. You know, we're looking for a Norman Rockwell type relationship, where, like you were saying, you knew your business owners, they knew you, and that's what we all would like to see. But as we know, we're understaffed, and you are saying that, oh, it's being reported what the numbers are, but they're not really true numbers, because they're reporting that you have 900 officers. There are not 900 officers on the street. That's what we're led to believe. That's what I would think. But we have maybe 400 officers, beat officers on the street. But that's over 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Now, when you break that down into 3 shifts, all those different teams, squads, the 6 area commands, at any given moment, we have maybe 80 officers out on the street for 600,000 people. That is a lot of calls. My husband, when he gets on his laptop to check how many calls they're holding, it's not unusual. You know, before he gets on shift, he'll check before he leaves the house. It's not unusual to have 16 calls holding. And for some of them, you know, they're all prioritized. And yeah, and then if that's not bad, it's like, you know, that's a lot of calls that are holding. And Ted was complaining about, oh, call holding for 2 days. Well, they have to prioritize. And if it's a priority 3, they're hoping it'll just go away because they don't have the time. Many times these guys, well, women too, but I'll use guys as, you know, they don't get time to eat. They're working constantly. And if they do get time to eat, then we're out here sitting, you know, as a community person, well, they're not doing anything. Look at that, they're eating. Why aren't they out there doing something? What, they're drinking a coffee and eating a donut? What are they doing? Yeah, that's because today they actually had 10 minutes time to go do something. So a lot of it is we need money. We need more officers on the street in order to be able to get them into the community, to give them time to actually get to know the people on their beat. And then another thing with relations is, I think Ted was saying again, that young children are afraid of police officers. Well, as a parent myself, and having been, you know, talking with other mothers and all, how many mothers and parents are out there teaching their young children and using police officers as discipline? Well, John, if you don't stop teasing your sister Susie, the police station is right down the street. I'll call the cops and they'll come and arrest you and take you away. And then we wonder why when Johnny is 16, why he has no respect for police officers, why he, by this time, of course, he's 16, he's got a lot of testosterone, he doesn't want to be afraid of the cops. He's going to show them, you know, I'm a man, I'm going to challenge this person. Because he's been taught since he was little that the cop is the boogeyman. So I think a lot of it is we need to educate parents and children. If we have enough officers on the street to actually have these community relations and to be able to have the time to walk around, how about the cop? We have so many elementary schools in this city. How about you have a cop who, one day a week, whenever, just randomly, he goes when the kids drives by the school, and if the kids are out playing on the playground, he plays some basketball with them. He pushes little Susie on the swing for a little while, and they just communicate, not in a setting where, like the old DARE programs where you have a cop in the front teaching children in an assembly type atmosphere. No, just actual one-on-one. Let's go play some hoops. Let me push you on the swing. Let's play some tag. But you have to get them when they're little in kindergarten and all to get their minds going, like, hey, you know, Officer so-and-so, he's really cool, I like him. Or I like her, you know, she's really nice. And if I am, having a problem or something, that's someone I can go to. That is someone I trust because they were nice to me.
Great. Thank you, Maureen.
Those are the good stories.
My experience of a police officer recently was that my wife had an accident, and it's her fault. Wasn't serious, nobody got hurt. But the police officer involved, she was in tears, and the police officer involved was so sensitive to her, even as the person responsible for the accident, and sensitive to the other person. And I was just watching this, and I looked down, and of course the officer's wearing a gun. And I'm thinking, 1 minute this officer has to be comforting a woman who's just been in an accident, and the next minute may have to rev up a bunch of adrenaline to deal with someone who is actually breaking the law in a violent way. And I thought, at that point, I've been watching this whole thing from the DOJ, and I thought, you know, the relationship of the community with the police is a very complex one. And it is oversimplified in a DOJ report. It's oversimplified in the media. And one of the marks of the relationship needs to be that the media, as a reflection of the community, does its job to surface issues, and then goes about the business of rebuilding the relationship or rebalancing the stories that are there. Unfortunately, the media gets kudos for continuing to beat the drum, and so what we have is a situation in which the DOJ report can take a number of incidents over a number of years and extrapolate that into a generalization about APD. That I have a problem with. I'm all for now what the process is to train officers better, to give them more resources in the field to deal with these situations, to deal with officers who may not be matched well to their job. And if they're not well placed on the force, then they should find some other place to work. And have some, I read the headlines today were about firing some APD officers. However, a relationship between the police and the community needs to be marked by support from the community advocacy for the toughest job we put public servants up for. There isn't one, and somebody's used the term the underbelly of society or something like that. There are a lot of people who aren't the underbelly of society that police officers deal with, and I know that sometimes those tense situations don't get to look as wonderful as what you were advocating, but I think it's good to work toward that and train people to get to something that's more problem solving. And I know that it's impossible for those situations to be predictable all the time and controllable. I just know that. And I think our society watches too much television, too many cop shows on TV, where there's a different sort of picture that's generated. Now,
So Don,
I want to wrap it up by saying I think the community needs to hold the media responsible for depicting the police force and these situations more accurately and in a more balanced way. Number one. I think trustworthiness, stories about trustworthiness of the police and the good things they do need to be out there as much as the situations where things don't turn out the way people want.